Do what?
He's projecting.
Oh, yeah.
Better.
He usually.
There it is.
It's so good to see y'all.
It's good to
And
see
it is
you.
so nice to be seen. I'm out. Oh, I don't work, so I can't.
Doing it today?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this special meeting of the Roaring Rock Town Council, this May 21st of 2020. If you would, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank goodness we don't have to look at Albert while we're doing that. Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the agenda? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, agenda's approved. Moving forward, the COVID-19 discussion and restrictions. Mr. Fox, would you like to read Watauga County's? And I guess we probably ought to read the governor's as well, should we not? Or at least,
Certainly, I think I can probably paraphrase the
Yeah.
governor's.
that sounds good.
10 pages.
Yeah, it was quite a few pages. So,
Yeah, we don't want to hear the whole thing.
yes, I'll start with the governor's Phase 2 implementation. The main changes in the Phase 2 are around our restaurants obviously being allowed to reopen to inside and outside dining at 50% capacity. So that's by far the majority of the change that took place. Several other things we'll talk about in relationship to summer camps and pools and things of that nature. Watauga County is probably the more significant given the fact that earlier this month, the Watauga County Commissioners met and continued the restriction of short-term rentals at that time at zero capacity, not allowing short-term rentals to take place in Watauga County, and then continuing to restrict anyone that arrived in Watauga County from an overnight stay to quarantine for 14 days. At the Tuesday night meeting of this week, the county commissioners voted 5-0 to lift the 14-day quarantine as of the beginning of Phase 2 of the governor's plan. Phase 2 of the governor's plan begins tomorrow at 5 p.m. So in essence, the county voted 5-0 to lift the 14-day quarantine as of 5 p.m. tomorrow. So that restriction, as they voted, is no longer as of 5 p.m. They partially lifted the short-term rental restriction to allow 50% capacity based on the maximum occupancy capacity as rated and published within each one of those facilities, all short-term rental facilities. So that's hotels and short-term rental homes. Family members residing in the same residence are exempt from the 50% reduction and maximum capacity limit. So obviously your family is not subject to the 50% rule. Campgrounds may open, but shall be subject to the same openings and restrictions as short-term rentals during the applicable period. Parks and playgrounds were reopened. Obviously, this was done before the governor spoke yesterday. As part of the governor's Phase 2 plan, he ordered playgrounds to remain closed. Parks are open and have been open for the most part under his plan, but playgrounds are to remain closed. It also goes on to say, upon implementation of the governor's Phase 3 and key metrics continuing to be met, the county will lift remaining short-term rental restrictions from a 50% reduction to 100%. So at that point, during Phase 3, based on the county's decision, the 50% capacity rule would go away and short-term rentals would remain, go back to normal under 100% capacity. So I think part of the meeting here today was to obviously review that and have conversations and discussions about how the town of Blowing Rock felt towards this particular topic. Be glad to try to answer any questions that you may have.
Phase 3 begin 20th, 26th?
There's no date that's been put out there other than as part of the Phase 2 plan, the date of June 26 was mentioned as a possibility, but it does mention that the Phase 2 can be changed or canceled at any time. So June the 26th is the only date that's been thrown out there from the governor's office at this point.
Can you offer any clarification on courts, tennis courts, basketball courts, in relation to playgrounds and parks?
So we have asked for some guidance from the governor's office. I have spoken to the county and spoken to the town. There's a feeling that not all courts are related or are equal. So basketball courts and tennis courts and pickleball courts may not be viewed in the same light. Basketball, in particular, is a much more difficult game to play and social distance. Pickleball courts and tennis courts allow for social distancing. So the conversation with the town and the county is that there's plans starting Friday at 5 p.m. to allow pickleball and tennis to be played, but basketball at this point feels like we're not quite there from the ability to social distance.
Okay, thank you.
Back to the 14-day quarantine, I think it worked. I think it was the right move that the county was more restrictive, and also with the short-term rentals. I mean, we've got a lot to be grateful for. I guess we'll never know for sure because of testing and everything, but I know that at one point, I remember looking at our numbers, because we get them from Shane every day, that our test kits were down to 20, and now we're, 175? So I think we needed this time, and, the virus is brought in. We don't have the virus up here. Whenever it comes again, or if we get a bigger onset, I think we warded it off and done a great job. So I think it was worth it, and we might have saved some lives.
Shane, the only thing in the governor's statement that states basketball was just included in the indoor facilities.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is
I don't
correct.
see anything stating outdoor tennis, pickleball.
That was my question. I needed the inside basketball, but I didn't think the outdoor basketball was included.
It is not, so, and Ms. Brown can speak to that. So like several other things, we've probably been a little more restrictive here than what even the rest of the state has been. I know tennis and maybe even pickleball has been played elsewhere and has been the last several weeks. So we here as the county on March the 29th, as part of their SOE, closed all playgrounds, including courts and picnic shelters at that time, and that included all courts, basketball courts and pickleball courts. So when I refer to that, I guess I refer from a Watauga County or the town of Blowing Rock. We are free to choose to do whatever I believe under this policy, as long as they can practice social distancing, et cetera, is what the governor's planned.
What you're saying though is the county is saying no basketball indoor or outdoor.
Well, the county doesn't have, as far as I know, the county doesn't have outdoor basketball courts.
Right.
So we're somewhat alone in that with our outdoor basketball courts. They do have some outdoor tennis courts, so does the town of Boone, and pickleball courts. So basketball really is, as far as I know, unless Ms. Brown can say otherwise, I'm not aware of any other outdoor basketball courts that exist that are publicly owned.
Probably what I'm getting beat up the hardest.
On basketball.
Part of the requirement is if, once you open them, you also have to be able to monitor and keep social distancing. So we have to have it staffed to make sure that people are following the less than 25 people, and when they play basketball, they have to be 6 feet apart.
That's impossible.
You can't do that. Okay.
Well, now, how did the county rule on tennis and pickleball? They didn't rule on that, did they?
I don't know if the county actually, I just know that the county said no summer, spring, like their sports programs are all canceled
Yeah.
for the whole season.
Isn't it kind of hard to play a 14 pickleball and stay 6 foot apart?
Trying to catch the ball.
Just if you're on the same side, yeah.
Yeah,
It would have to be a two-man pickleball game.
So the county has, is a unique situation where most of their outdoor courts are closed because of the construction. So outdoor areas aren't as important to them right now, obviously, as indoor. An indoor facility is yet to be determined. I don't think there's been a date put on the opening of the indoor facility unless someone here knows otherwise. The town of Boone is planning on continuing to keep their outdoor courts closed for now. But again, that's the town of Boone. That's not here.
And the schools are closed.
And the school
So
systems,
any
all
kind-
facilities are closed within
Yeah.
the school system.
So any type of basketball court or basketball goal on any school property in the county is closed.
Yes, right.
Or playgrounds.
All school property is currently closed and will
Okay.
remain that way until further notice, outdoor or indoor.
So what does the state again say about basketball?
It
No.
doesn't identify it in particular. And other areas have had basketball and pickleball played for weeks now. The state hasn't ruled. The indoor they have, not outdoor.
Could that fall under playgrounds?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Well, they touch the playground. I'm thinking they're saying like playground equipment where they touch it.
Yeah.
They
It do-
are, because you can't keep the kids 6 feet apart.
It doesn't fall under it.
Ms. Hagan said earlier today, she was trying to clarify some things, and one of the things that she said about the gym was the production of heavy breathing is what it produced, was the reason they, put gyms in there. So,
Yeah, most definitely indoor facilities are much more of a concern than outdoor facilities, of course. I mean, just given the fact of how quickly it can spread indoors, more than 10 minutes, I think, is the standard, and someone can correct me there. So indoor facilities has been, I think, the focus point from a state's, with little guidance on the outdoor. So I think parks, when the parks were allowed to reopen at the beginning of phase one, majority of parks reopened, I think, completely across the state. Again, we've been more restrictive here, so it's our decision here to move forward how we see fit. The governor isn't limiting us on the outdoor area. From what
Well,
we
as
know.
far as the park, our park goes, I like how we've got it, the gazebo taped off. But if we could move some of those benches out for people to sit and eat on, or not that they're gonna do it this week in the rain,
Right.
but, that might be an idea. You probably have a plan already. I'll let you know. Are we gonna follow the agenda or not? Because we're not following the agenda.
Yeah, we'll come back to, we got recreation coming up, but, so, we can talk about it now, but it is coming up. So,
I have a question on restaurants. When they reopen inside and out, is it 50% total? Pardon?
Nothing, I was talking to Jim.
Is it 50% total inside and out, or is it 50% capacity on the outside and 50% capacity on the inside?
it is total.
Based on the fire.
That's total, that's inside and outside.
So is somebody gonna give that to whoever's gonna be enforcing that this weekend?
I thought it was based on the fire department's occupancy.
It says,
It
allows
is.
restaurants to open for for on-premise dining with limits on occupancy, specific requirements for disinfection and so on and so forth. So,
On premise.
on-premise.
On premise. So
That includes both.
that does. So how is the on premise calculated for restaurants? It is applying the following three tests. So 50% of stated fire capacity, which they all have. And everyone obviously has that information. Or for spaces without stated fire capacity, no more than 12 customers for every 1,000 square feet of the location's total square footage, including the parts of the location that are not accessible to customers or guests. So it's either the stated fire capacity or no more than 12 customers per total of 1,000 square feet. Not of dining, but total square feet. Limiting the number of people in the space so that everyone can stay 6 feet apart. That's number 2. And people sitting at a table must not be within 6 feet of any customer sitting at another table. So all tables have to remain at least 6 feet apart. Each guest has to remain 6 feet apart from other
Plus the
guests.
chairs.
Plus the chairs 6 feet from each other. So
Unless they're family, right?
unless they're a family, that is correct. So that does go on to say that limiting within the family is not included in that. So the conversations we've had is that the capacity issue probably isn't as much of an issue as the 6 feet. I mean, by the time you put everyone 6 feet apart, like we are in this room, it really does limit your capacity. But 50%, there's 3 tests, and 50% of fire capacity is one of those tests.
So is that something that somebody's gonna be looking at with our restaurants so that, to help them understand what 50% capacity is?
That, if you don't mind, the thing I read on that, that has to be actually before they open up, it's supposed to be posted on premises is what that is.
Yeah, early on in phase 1 with retail, Mr. John Warren, he's not here today, but John provided everyone with that guidance of what that capacity was for retail, and he'll do the same for restaurants.
He
That's
sent that,
yes,
he sent that to every business.
he did to every business.
Including chamber.
Yeah, so, and restaurants were included in that original, so now the follow-up language includes with this here, with
So that would
50%.
be indoor and outdoor and who's gonna have that information to be able to enforce it this weekend?
It's posted, so they're supposed to have it posted.
I guess Sue's question is, who's gonna enforce this?
Yeah, because we've had some issues.
Is it the health department?
It's easy to answer.
No, it's
Move
us.
on.
No, it's us.
It's y'all?
It's us. I mean, we filled the complaints, and it's our police department to enforce that.
Okay.
Well, and there'll be some natural selection. I don't know that I mean, I think we hope for a rush, but just like the daycares that are open, not everybody's going back. So people might not rush back like we're hoping they will,
We have,
And the weather, you're exactly right, too.
Weather's gonna clear.
we have followed up many complaints thus far. Our PD, and I can't give you the exact number, but we have followed up with many complaints in the last 8 or 10 weeks. Each one beginning with the conversation, and we attempt to continue to do that. Chief Miller, Sheriff Hageman, and the DA and others have been in constant conversation of what they want that to look like. So it's not only us. There's obviously conversations there from a DA's perspective, potential whether or not someone would be prosecuted and what that would look like, and whether or not someone would be potentially incarcerated and what that would look like. So there's conversations there on the enforcement of this.
So are they also gonna be allowed to do curbside as well as 50% occupancy?
Yes.
Yes, that's not mentioned in the.
So we've had some restaurants that are taking 5 of our parking places. And if we're gonna open up to retail,
Mhm.
I think they need to find, either use their own parking lot and, put their employees maybe in the deck.
Can I,
I would be willing for.
can I stop you for just a
Yeah.
minute? Okay. Our zoning enforcement officer will be put on the line to answer those questions. Let's address Apple Cart, if you don't mind.
Okay,
And then as we work down to restaurants and parking, then we can get Kevin on the line to go over what his thoughts were on this. Am I not correct?
That is your call, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we do, is that okay with you,
that's
Sue?
fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
Mayor, are you walking down this list?
I was
Yes.
getting ready to say, do we need to go back to and vote on each one individually going down the list?
No, you don't have to vote on it. Originally, we were going with what Watauga County did.
Right.
So unless you want to change something on the list and make
We
it
don't
more
have to.
strenuous, then you don't have to vote on it, okay?
If I may, we are currently still under consent with the county at this point.
That's the reason I was asking if there was any changes to this that needs to be brought up.
Okay.
The answer's no.
Yeah, so, in other words, 14-day quarantine, we observed the Watauga County's recommendations and the short-term rentals, and now we move on to Apple Cart.
So 5 p.m. tomorrow, short-term rentals will be at 50% within the town, and 14-day quarantine no longer exists.
And I have to applaud, I saw Diamond Rentals and Homestead Inn in their advertising that they will be open at 5 tomorrow. So people are following the governor and the county's directive and doing the right thing. So I know there are other ones, but those are just the two as that I saw. And that's short-term rental and a small motel.
Apple Cart. So now for the last 2 summers, we've had Apple Cart running within the town of Blowing Rock on Friday and Saturdays. The TDA has been in partnership with the town to fund that particular service at a rate of about $25,000, round numbers. Concerns began, obviously, when we began before phase 1, but when we began the stay-at-home order, concerns began with how can we properly social distance within the bus and the shuttle and things of that nature back in the March timeframe. So Commissioner Matheson has been under spearheading the shuttle now for several years. We had several conversations along with the Chamber and the TDA and Apple Cart, of course, of what procedures they were taking to make sure their ridership was safe. Of course, with ASU not being in session, that makes things a little bit simpler for them. We knew here we have a smaller shuttle, essentially a van or a coach. So we had some concerns. And so the conversations over several conference calls led to a final one on the 13th. And by the time we reached May 13th, several of our larger events in the town have either been canceled or postponed. And so concerns also were there not only with social distancing and safety, but whether or not there was going to be the ridership. The TDA budget, as Ms. Commissioner Powell knows, is projected to be 40% less than it was last year. And so they were looking at ways to potentially cut cost. And this was one of the areas they did not feel like that they could continue to fund. So it was essentially asked of the town to fund this position, or this service. And speaking with the Apple Cart director, Craig Hughes, there was some concern of how many folks we could put on the shuttle at one time with the 6-foot rule and et cetera. And that number was essentially a single-digit number. So very few people could be on our bus. So the decision was made operationally to cancel that service for this summer and have a conversation early on in 2021 about continuing the service next year. So I wanted to give you an update within that. Mr. Matheson, or Commissioner Matheson was a part of that conversation, like I said, along with the Chamber and the TDA. Just felt like this year a lot of uncertainty as we try to make budget cuts and look for ways to save monies. Obviously, and that's important, on top of, number one, keeping our folks safe. And it really is a difficult thing to practice social distancing right now on any type of a bus or mass transit. And so we did have some concerns there. So the decision was made last week to cancel that service for this year before it began. So I wanted to give everyone an update operationally on that. So it will not be included in the TDA budget or in the town's budget.
And you go ahead and take the other one with what the Chamber's looking at doing with Dana, about counseling theirs also. Because of the restrictions that you would have to do with trying to run a shuttle service this year. The Chamber is not doing anything because there's been so many cancellations. As far as we know, with what Charles told us in that meeting, they're not going to do anything with Dana this year.
That is correct.
They're not going to be running the shuttle. Isn't that right?
That is correct.
Is that the trolley?
Well, yes, right.
Yeah.
Rumor has it he may be getting ready to retire anyway.
We just got an email from NC State, and I'm not sure, I know the campuses can operate separately, but a lot of times they follow suit, that they are going to open early on August 10th, and they're going to be finished with their semester before Thanksgiving. So I don't know how that will affect, Boone, of course, much more than us, but I don't know if you've heard anything from that state yet, if they're gonna do that or not, but I just wanted, as far as Apple Card or whatever, it might be are they talking about canceling it in Boone too?
No, I think, and I don't want to speak for Apple Cart, but the larger buses, they have the ability to social distance a little bit more, and they've gone through the training of how to clean the buses and sterilize them, et cetera. So the plan, as far as I know, is to continue Apple Cart service,
Well,
absolutely.
their buses are still running.
Yeah, they're still running. So.
Oh, good, okay.
Yeah, Apple Cart buses is still
It's
running, they're
essential.
right now.
Yeah, okay.
And I would add, and again, Ms. Brown is here, if we were to get into a situation where we feel like we have an event that we would have to have a shuttle service or buses for, we do have some buses that we've used for summer camps that are here. So if we get into a situation where that's needed, we can have that conversation. And if we're in a different phase and things are different at that point, then that's our plan B essentially, is that we do have a couple buses that we can use in a pretty quick amount of time if we need to, obviously, and find drivers and things of that nature. Things we can do operationally if we get to that situation, we can. So we just didn't feel like it was probably a responsible thing to do and go into a contract of that magnitude with the unknowns that are out there. So.
And I think, if I may, one thing to come out of this is we're looking about doing a kind of like a transportation committee with the chamber and the TDA, and the TDA usually puts the money in, and the town of working together between now and the first of the year to see, especially if the chamber, if they lose Dana, about seeing what we might come up as far as maybe next year, well, hopefully if everything's good, what we may come up for next year as far as public transportation.
That is correct, and Apple Cart has been absolutely wonderful, and we hope that we can continue with Apple Cart. We would like some flexibility and some ability to have a more flexible schedule if that's possible come next year. So we'll play that one close and see how things play out between now and next year, what the demand looks like. So
Want to get Kevin on the line?
I sure will. I'll start the process here. If you want to maybe refer to David's email that he sent David at the market.
Yes.
I don't have it before me, but
It's all up here.
Okay, we'll get Kevin, Mr. Rothrock
I
on
don't have
the telephone.
Is that today?
Okay, I've got you here, so can you hear? You may want to mute me in the background.
Yeah, a few days ago.
Perfect.
Yeah, I got it, but
Several days ago, we all received an email from David Barker at Blowing Rock Market asking about outdoor dining and if outdoor dining could potentially be expanded given the restrictions that are placed on the restaurants. That, along with the conversation just a few moments ago about curbside pickup and parking spaces, I would say all those fall within this bullet point of restaurants and dining. Mr. Rothrock's on the phone for any questions we may have with planning and zoning. But several of you had some responses to that email, and several of you I know had some questions with what we may or may want to not do moving forward. Currently, and this was done so without a vote, it was done so with just being flexible in the times. We allowed restaurants the flexibility of blocking off several parking spaces for curbside pickup. At the time that we did that, that was obviously when retail establishments were closed, and so parking was not as high in demand. And so we allowed each one of the restaurants that needed access to block off several parking spaces, and that's continuing now. That's still into place. But again, that was done so, and Kevin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, done so during the time in which we had other things that were currently restricted, including retail. And so that was brought up just a few moments ago, like I said, and then the other topic was brought up was whether or not restaurants could potentially expand outdoor seating into parking areas. That was by Mr. Barker. So those are the two topics that we have here from a bullet point.
In addition, Mr. Barker did mention about closing off Park Avenue for seating.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Which is how many parking spaces?
He wants to,
About
he's
10 or
mentioned
12.
for
I
seating.
close the street.
Yeah, close the street for seating.
Right. Well, I'm just saying, we lose how many parking
I think
spaces?
there's over 50. I think we counted that.
Yeah.
Depends on where you close it, of
Yeah.
course, but
How many?
I think it was over 50 that we counted.
Well, you can't-
If you count the library and go all the way down,
You can't very easily close Park Avenue when you've got to have access to the chamber and to our police department
And to the houses of
and to the
the
houses.
residents.
Next.
Yeah, I think this is all a trial. We're gonna learn each weekend of what's working, what's not working, and I think, maybe down the road, if it looks like we can close it, maybe so, but I think right now, we're at a point where the police have to enforce, we just don't need to open more space than what we have at 50%. The ones that I was concerned about for restaurants, if they're gonna do curb service, are sixpence, because they literally don't have a space for people to pull up. And then Story Street Grill has a street alongside of them, and I don't know how accessible that is. I think Town Tavern has good space in back, they can go down Pine Street and turn in there and then keep going. I'm trying to think of who else. Mellow Mushroom, I think they've been using the bank, or they're all the way down to the corner, so.
It's 26 spots, I just zoomed in.
Okay, 26?
Yeah,
All right. That's a lot of space.
yeah.
So you're,
What you were talking about too, I was looking at that, and this is just tossing out an idea. For them, a way that we could leave maybe one spot for curbside form and designate those spots like, okay, let's say, take Town Tavern, let's just start on that side of the street. Take it there, the parking space there at Pine. The one that joins Pine, where Pine Street cuts, take that first parking space. For, Story Street, take the parking space that cuts down to Story's warehouse back there. For sixpence, take the parking space that cuts down the alley. What I'm leading to is it takes away from anybody trying to parallel park or anything. They're able to pull straight in with a wide spot and be able to get in and out and pick up and go on. Because if you've got a lot of traffic, the last thing you want is somebody trying to parallel park a bunch of times, picking up food and getting out. So that was just a suggestion to throw out. If you give them anything, let's give it to the spaces that's next to an alleyway or a street to make it easier for them.
And there's one retail
Right.
in between them. The other thing I was thinking was across the street, it does mean that they're gonna have to walk across the street, and not everybody pays attention to our little pedestrian zone, so that could be, that could be bad.
What's Kevin's thought?
Is he talking to us, not realizing we're
No,
not
I think
listening?
it's the background.
have you had discussions with Chief Miller about this?
I have, and we've not had any issues thus far. So we've been fortunate, I think, with the traffic that we've had, even the last 2 weekends, where those parking spaces have not been as in high demand. So we've not had anyone that's had issues with it.
So what they're doing at Mellow Mushroom, it sometimes gets to be like 5 or 6,
Right.
and they make new spaces.
Okay.
So there's a space there after you come around, but actually 5 or 6 cars can fill all the way in around that corner. But most of the time, if they see that, they pull into Wells Fargo and park.
Yeah, I had to get on the other side of the street to go around the dually that was backed up when I made the corner. And there were 3 or 4 spaces in front of him, and he was just waiting.
We've not had any formal complaints, is my
I mean,
answer
it
to
seems
that
to
at
be
this point.
flowing, and really, there's just one space that's blocked there, parking space in front of Mellow
So
Mushroom.
the big issue is £6. We don't have anything.
Story.
Story Street Grill, those are the 2 that we need to,
But back to your original question.
yeah.
Those places, those restaurants that have their own dedicated parking, can we allow them to use, if they're only able to have 50% capacity inside, can we allow them to use part of their parking for seating? That was one question that Mr. Barker had. So can we allow them to use part of their parking for seating? And that's the question I'm posing to Kevin and to you guys.
Because actually, if you go by, the parking is done by seating capacity, and if your seating capacity just got cut 50%, then your parking spaces just got cut by a certain amount, so
That
Right,
makes sense.
that's right.
that might be the reason, for Kill Devil Hills, I think they dedicated, allowed them up to 25% of their parking to do with food. I think I read that article right when they were right,
Yeah.
25%.
What, but just the Kill Devil Hills, the majority of their traffic too, though, is already there.
Yeah.
They don't get the day trippers that we get. But that being said, what's Kevin's thought on that?
I think Kevin and I, or Mr. Rothrock and I, had conversations to just the current ordinance that's in place, and then obviously, could we allow flexibility? I think during a state of emergency, like with a lot of things, we can allow flexibility if we choose to. We just need to be able to kind of, I think, put something together that clearly defines what that is to help if we have individuals that aren't necessarily abiding by those restrictions that we put into place. And
Well,
is that correct, Kevin?
Yes. Shane, I really can hear you. I can hear a little bit of the background conversation, but if you're, we could kind of observe what happens this weekend. I'll be over there and take a look. But if if we talk specifically about David's, he had some outdoor seating. He's kind of taking it up right now, but he could put that outdoor seating, but he only had 2 tables inside. So, I don't know specifically for his situation. He would have 1 table inside, but he could have all the outside stuff, outside tables, as long as they met the spacing requirements.
So your recommendation is to see what happens this weekend?
Your recommendation, Kevin, is to see what happens this weekend before we make an adjustment?
I think so. And the other thing is, where I think that along the street in front of not Sixpence, Town Tavern, they were taking up 4, 5, 6 spaces.
They were hogging.
I don't think that would be appropriate anymore. I think they've got plenty of outdoor dining and inside stuff, and they need to use their parking lot for some parking and open these other, because there are going to be some people come this weekend. They need to be able to use the public spaces as much as possible.
I agree.
If you gave them 1 and gave maybe Sixpence 1 space, the only problem, it's hard to get in and out once people are parking on the street. It's pretty easy when there's nobody here.
So if we consider, so is parking lot seating off the table right now?
I think we talked about waiting and see what happens this weekend.
So it's gonna rain all weekend, and unless, they put a tent up, are we allowing them to put a tent up? Or we wanna keep it the same?
Under our ordinance, yeah, good point. Can the restaurants put tents up?
Let's Kevin, call him back. Temporary tents are allowed on their own
What I
property.
was gonna say is if they have a parking lot and we allow seating in that parking lot,
Hey, this is
and
Kim
they
Rothrock.
retain the curbside.
I think that,
Yeah.
good point.
That's right. I mean, if they have a parking lot, we're giving them one of our parking spaces for curbside.
And seating.
And seating just doesn't seem like that's a good idea. I mean, they need to use their parking.
For someone like Story or Sixpence that doesn't have a parking.
They're the
lot,
ones that I'm worried about.
Well, they would obviously get to keep their curbside.
Or what
Okay.
Doug's recommending is use the alleyway,
Okay, you're back.
but they're still gonna,
Well, it's not using the parking space, it's a
Oh.
corner of the,
Oh, at the
corner of the
corner.
alleyway. It's giving each place one parking space for curbside, because even with if we give what you were talking about, you still are gonna have a whole lot of people that's afraid to go out to a restaurant to eat, that will still love to do curbside, that don't feel safe enough yet going back on the inside. So I feel like this is still some way of trying to help both sides out, helping the restaurants out to some degree, and helping the public that don't want to go inside and eat, they just wanna come pick up their order and go, you know.
I think, yeah, and I think what we can get into is the retail saying, well, I'd like my own, I'd like 2 spaces in front of mine, you know, and
I think one
we're-
per restaurant is fair.
Like what?
For
Yeah, it's just-
like you were saying, for 6 cents, and that's because of their location, but if we trim it down to 1 spot of public parking for their pickup or to go.
That's good.
and what Doug's saying, it's a place you could pull in and then
Yes,
get back out, so
That's
you're
a
not.
huge point there,
Yeah.
yeah.
So your other thing for Story Street is to make that first parking space on Pine Street and get them off of.
Well, for Story Street would be the one that cuts down by Salmark, you know, that goes back down the road there. For them, it would be grabbing that first parking, marking off that spot right there.
At the front of where their door is.
Right, almost in front of their door.
Right, I'm wondering, where were you saying, I'm thinking for Town Tavern,
Is right, yeah, the very first one down there where you cut down Pine Street.
that first one on Pine Street.
Right.
Yeah,
One only.
right.
He's hauled the whole block down there.
Well, the other thing is that the construction has their stuff in one of our spots that needs to be. I mean, I knew there was a reason initially, they were working on something and needed equipment there, but now they just have barrels. Because there's 3 spaces there, one out there.
Well, should we just let Kevin?
Did that answer what you was talking about, Dave? Because
Yeah.
we're still talking about parking lot.
Kevin, we would, y'all agree, just let Kevin spearhead it, what do you think?
Yeah,
No vote needed?
Well, and to use this weekend to see where the glitches are. We may find that we do need to open up Park Street, or we may need to look at it, but I think we could see what the restaurant owners come up with. They may be creative, but,
So, along with that, can we ask Kevin if they would like to put a tent up in a few of their parking spaces that
In-
own their property? Is that in the ordinance allowed, or, I mean,
Shane
it's-
said it was.
Kevin, can you hear the question?
No,
Okay, let me recap real quick. So where we are right now is the thought would be to essentially wait and see how this weekend goes for the most part. However, each restaurant would be allowed, starting this weekend, to have 1 parking space that would be used for curbside pickup. And that, more than likely, especially with Story Street and Sixpence, would be a in parking space, and one with a easy ingress and egress. So 1 on the end within those.
all right.
The question was asked, can restaurants put temporary tents up if it's weather-related purposes to have outdoor seating? Can they put up your 12 by 12 tents over top of outdoor tables, et cetera? Is that allowed within the
in their
ordinance?
parking area?
Within the parking area, or
why
anywhere on
would
the
you need it
property?
in the parking area?
Yes, if it's, I think 12 by 12, 10 by 10, something like that, would not need a permit. If they want to do something bigger, they need to either they need to get a permit. They need to do it tomorrow, really.
So.
Or they need to, call the office, call John and say, look, we want to put a 20 by 20. There needs to be a inspection process for something of that size. I'll verify with John. 12 months, have at it.
When we finish with this, Shane, will you repeat this?
For the,
So, for the video?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm confused about where the tent's going.
So the reason I said that is they're opening their restaurant at 50% capacity. Their seating their parking on their property is based on that indoor capacity. So they
No.
have extra, supposedly, most of them, extra parking that should be empty if they're doing things correctly. So could they put some, tents up and have seating outside?
But then are they gonna max out of the 50% occupancy?
Oh, for the whole property?
Right.
Oh, right,
See,
so,
I'm thinking,
That's
now town
true.
tavern, if it's gonna rain, might want a tent over their patio.
But see, 50% capacity is written in the governor's order, is 50% of, yes, patio, inside,
Right.
okay? But if you cut their 50%, if you cut them back to 50% inside, what the real question is, can they use 5 parking or 6 parking spaces in their parking lot to meet a 50%?
Well, what I'm understanding is
the 6-foot rule.
is they have the 6-foot rule, but the occupancy is patio and inside.
That's correct.
That is correct.
All right, so the only other thing I don't see how putting something out on their parking area is not gonna make them over their 50% occupancy.
Unless they're
Well,
closed in, you know, they can't manage the 6 feet distancing.
guys, this is one of the fine lines in the governor's order. It says 2 things, 3 things actually. 50% capacity, but yet you have to have 6 foot between tables and chairs. And also, you have to cut back to you have to look at no more than 12 people per 1,000 square feet.
Right.
So,
You have to have a law degree to open up.
Well, I think, Kevin, maybe what I'm hearing Virginia say is that if, let's just take town taverns, since they've got an inside and outside parking area. If their occupancy that they can have, and I'm making this up because I don't know what it is, but if it's 50, then they can do that either inside part outside, and maybe do a tent. Is that right?
I think I heard her right. I think that's right. 50% of the occupancy of the property.
Okay, so,
So that spreads everybody out, so they meet those 3 things.
right. So, you know what the occupancy requirement for 50% is on every restaurant and retail?
They'd be posted.
It's a fire thing.
Kevin, the question is,
50%
that's where they
though.
are. 1,000.
do we know what the fire capacity is for each restaurant and retail?
I think it's probably posted for retail. I don't know, but for restaurants, it should be posted at the restaurant.
But it's gonna be 100%, right? Not
So half of that, of course.
That is only for indoor.
It's indoor.
There's not a capacity for outdoor, is there, Kevin?
Yeah, there is, because they do their parking.
No,
You're sitting.
it's indoor only.
Indoor only.
What's posted is based on the fire code, and it's indoor only.
Then why does Speckled Trout have 40 seats outdoor?
No, they're.
I didn't hear that.
Capacity for outdoors is in our code.
So the seating capacity outdoor is what we're talking about.
Yes, so 2 things here. One, in the governor's order, it only talks about fire capacity. We in town, that's inside, we in the town of Blowing Rock, and Kevin, you can hear me, I guess, in the town of Blowing Rock,
Yes.
have a number of seats, a limit, a capacity based on several things, parking, I believe, being the most piece of that. Is that correct, Kevin?
No, parking has nothing to do with indoor.
No, outdoor,
capacity.
the outdoor seating. The
Outdoor?
number of tables and seats.
For some, yes, but for some, they've had outdoor dining for years and never had parking. I mean, that's just, for example, Village Cafe, they don't have any parking, and they have seats. I mean, they've had those seats for years. So it's variable, but if there's an indoor capacity, that's quantifiable. We can figure out what that is.
I think
If we're gonna, we're gonna have to use some flexibility. I don't think it's wise for, like, for example, El Rincon to put tables and chairs in their whole parking lot. You know, maybe the front section, but the side remain open for people to park.
Okay.
I think we just gotta balance it.
My recommendation is the seating's already established. We already know what these restaurants have, indoor and outdoor.
Yeah.
We cut that in half, and that's what they can have. If they want to use that, they can do that all indoors or all outdoors, or part of the 25% of the parking lot. That's up to them where they put it,
As long as they meet the
as long as they don't
6
exceed
social-
50%.
50%.
Yeah,
And I would say that if they have a parking lot, we allow them to use 25% of it for that seating.
Okay.
Well,
And if they want to put 12 by 12, no bigger than 12 by 12 tents, then let them do that. They can put as many as they want, anything over that needs a permit.
As long as they meet the outdoor capacity of 50%, correct?
But they just don't, let's say they have 10 seats outside and 20 seats inside.
Right.
That gives them a capacity of 15.
Right.
If they can put all 15 inside,
If they can do it.
in socially distanced and all that, great. If they want to put 5 inside and 10 outside, or 5 and 5 out in the parking lot,
Okay.
what do we care? It's,
Yeah.
I don't
that's
think
true.
we do, as long
I
as they
think-
understand about the occupancy.
You guys had a good point, and that is, let's see what goes on over the
Yeah.
weekend, let Kevin handle it.
Right.
well,
What do you think?
I think that this place is opening up tomorrow at 5 o'clock, and they want to know what they can and can't do.
So they need to know.
So I think we need to give them guidance on that, so that everybody's operating under the same rules. And then if problems arise, we'll tweak it. But,
Right.
I mean, everybody's ready to pull the trigger tomorrow at 5 o'clock, and I think they need to know.
So your recommendation is 50, following governor's guidelines, his guidelines are 50% of fire capacity.
Well,
There's an or in there, in one of them, I think.
It says fire.
It says fire.
I know, but it also says,
I think the governor gives us 3 ways to measure that.
yeah,
I think that, we'll let them pick how they want to measure that.
It is limit customers' indoor and outdoor seating areas to the emergency maximum occupancy limit. Also limit customers at tables so that no more than 10 people shall be seated together at the same table, unless they're related. More than 10 people may sit at a table if they're related, same household, and ensure the 6-foot social distancing. That's, in a sense.
All I'm saying is let's follow the governor's guidelines with the addition of 25% of parking can be used toward
Okay, I'm good with that.
toward their 50%.
toward their 50%.
Yeah,
We're gonna give
they
each
want to
one on
have a
Main
spot.
Street, one parking spot for takeout.
Yeah.
That the town determines
Yes.
that spot.
I'm gonna bring up a point right here, and one thing being is, do we wanna do that this weekend? And if so, you better get a lot of help in here, because ain't one of these restaurants, I doubt, we're gonna be able to figure out what 25% of their parking versus all this is gonna be, without a lot of help from Kevin and John Warren, going each one of them and helping them decide that.
And a lot of people are going to acquire.
You see what I'm saying there?
Well, the
There'll be
thing
a lot of
is,
people
they
that
have,
didn't know it.
They should know, actually.
I mean,
What
Dutcher,
quarter of their parking is versus
No.
50% of capacity.
But
Because see, we're only allowing, like, if they got 10 parking spaces, they're allowed to use 3, rather, 2 or 10.
right, they should be able to do that unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, and these are business owners, they're intelligent, they know what to do. And then Kevin can assist.
Well, I think that they should be able to count their spaces and take 25% of that, and if something needs adjusting, we'll adjust it. Just like we had to adjust signs, which is another issue.
And tents less than, 10 by 10, 12 by 12 are allowed without a permit.
Yes.
And all of this, we're just talking all of this is phase two, correct?
Mhm.
Right. And this is, we're gonna
You
revisit
want
after
to
the
repeat
first.
that to Kevin
slide.
and
Yeah.
also for those listening in?
Yes. Kevin, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, so the recommendation that is on the table right now begins with allowing restaurants to have one curbside pickup parking space per restaurant. And the favorable position of those parking spaces would be on the end of the rows that we have for ingress and egress. Another recommendation on the table is to allow up to 25%, no more than 25% of their on-site parking, not public parking, but private parking, to be allowed to be used towards their 50% while still following the governor's guidelines, which remain at 6 feet per individual, no more than 10 per table, etc. And then the third recommendation on the table would be to allow restaurants to provide coverage in the way of portable or temporary tents no larger than 12 by 12, if need be, on those outside areas.
Okay.
With the understanding, this is during phase two, and like everything that we've done thus far, we will be flexible moving forward, and if it does or doesn't work, we can make those changes.
Okay. And this doesn't just apply to downtown. There may be areas that are wanting to do this in addition.
Yeah, I think.
Within town limits.
I think it's-
Yeah. Okay.
Within town limits, 321 included, yes.
All right. We'll work on that tomorrow and start visiting these places and kind of give them those parameters.
That's great. I think,
I can help if you would like.
Mr. Harwood said he could help if he would like.
If he's buying lunch, I'm good. Let's go do it.
I'll buy one.
It's still curbside though, until 5.
I don't know if I can still get served in this town.
you better,
We,
you better put a
we,
maximum.
we can find a steak somewhere.
You get served, just be careful.
Thank you, Kevin.
Put a maximum.
Thanks. See you now.
She's expensive.
All right, moving forward, I think we've resolved that issue.
Yep.
Short term. Recreation.
Absolutely. So several items here, and these are just 3. We can definitely expand into courts and other things. But several things that are obviously coming up under normal circumstances would be our summer camp would be opening up in early June. Our pool would normally open up this weekend. 4th of July parade obviously takes place the 4th of July weekend. Those are the 3 things that we put on here because these are things that we need to start gaining some guidance and preparing for. Number 1 being summer camp. A number of parents have already signed up their children for summer camp. Like normal, because our summer camp, luckily and fortunately, is always in high demand. Some things that have transpired with summer camp since the last time we talked, which was probably quite some time ago with regards to summer camp. The school system has asked for us to not utilize Blowing Rock Elementary School for the summer. Most notably because of the unknown that they may have, or the unknown they have with preparation towards the upcoming school year. So the school obviously has been closed to the outside since March the 14th, and that continues to be the case. And so Dr. Elliott has talked with a number of us with regards to using the school system facilities this summer, and has asked for us not to do that right now because of the unknown of the planning. So I say that, and Ms. Brown's obviously here, and she can speak towards some other potential guidelines and recommendations for summer camps. But most notably, the school system has asked us not to use the school, which does put a large issue in front of us of where the children may be or could be. She can speak, Ms. Brown can speak towards other things with regards to field trips and transportation requirements, or how that is not suggested. Also note that Watauga County on Tuesday night canceled their summer camp. I believe WAMI has canceled their summer camp, and I believe the YMCA and has either canceled or will be canceling their summer camps. And so staff recommendation as of right now is to cancel summer camp. But I'd like Ms. Brown to have just a few moments to talk about the work or some of the research that went into that recommendation.
So I have been on a numerous amount of Zoom calls and with a lot of different recreations around the state. We've been on calls with other directors around the state, and everybody's situation is different. There are recreation departments who are going to have summer camp, but that's because they have rec centers with lots of rooms, and they can have smaller groups of kids with staff people, and they also have a lot of restroom facilities. So they are talking about having like group 1, 2, 3, et cetera, and this is group 1's room, this is group 1's stall, this is group 1's sink in the bathroom, and so they have that capability. We do not. Even if we chose not to use the school, if we chose just to use the rec center, we have one facility per boy and girl. So we would have to sanitize after every child went to the bathroom. They have to stay 6 feet apart. They have to have their own separate supplies. Each child they can't share supplies. We are not allowed to have any kind of group activity. Every activity that we do, we have to do social distancing, and they have to stay apart. And those activities, they specifically state in here that we cannot do would be like basketball, football, wrestling, anything that they are all like gathered together. We are not allowed to have field trips. Nobody is allowed to have any kind of transportation. Parents, they are saying that parents would not be allowed to come in. We would have to have a specific counselor that would stand outside and ask a list of questions, take temperatures, walk them into the building, deliver them to their group, and then come back. So that is going to be interesting if we have, the time that it would take to get all of that done. There's a lot of regulations put in place. Even if we decided that we wanted to have summer camp, we don't have the facilities to keep kids separated, and we wouldn't be able to accommodate all the ones that we have registered right now. There's just no way. And right now we have playgrounds are out.
Camp does not sound like fun.
Well, and honestly, I will tell you that's a big concern for us because we have a good reputation for summer camp. We have people who come from Boone. We have people who want to come over here to Blowing Rock Summer Camp. And the one thing I don't want to happen is that we try to make this work, and then next year, if things are back to quote-unquote normal, and mom and dad's like, hey, I'm signing you up for summer camp, they're like, I ain't going back there, because it was just so different. And I don't want to ruin that either, which is another.
Is the regulation not to allow the parents in? Is that a state requirement that's come up?
Yeah, it's in the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, in their guidelines. They don't want the parents to come in. They also state that they don't want anyone over the age of 65 dropping their kids off, bringing them to camp. And I will tell you that probably half of our camp is grandparents the grandkids come from off the mountain and stay with them for a week and use our summer camp. So that would be something else.
So my big question, and I think this may be why some camps haven't canceled yet, have we used that money already? So their deposits or whatever for summer camp, have we spent that money?
No.
I think that deserves a round of applause.
We will need to make a motion or have a motion
To refund it, okay. Well, I think that was very wise, regardless of COVID or not. And here we go, this is why you don't spend that money before you have camp. So good job with that.
I will also say that my staff they are really wanting to do something. So they have started brainstorming about possibly all the kids who have registered for summer camp doing some kind of videos twice a week that if the parents so choose, if they want to have some kind of activity, they can do the science experiment that they were going to do for summer camp that week, or the craft project, like, hey, here are the things that you could do as far as crafts. They even had the conversation with me before this meeting about on a week like today, or a week like this week where it's been rainy, you can't get outside, even do like a Zoom movie day where they, you know, have a movie playing that you can log on to and watch it as a group together or something. You know, I mean, they're really trying to do something. And another thought that had come up was we have interviewed and we have counselors. Now, whether or not they're here or at home, we don't know that. But we have thought for those parents who are really struggling about what are we going to do with childcare, potentially getting 4 or 5 parents in touch with these counselors, and maybe that's their job. You know, parents can hire them on their own to kind of help out with watching those kids who absolutely need it. And it would help them as well with not having a job.
So for our kids, they were scheduled to go away to North Carolina School of Science and Math as a week camp. And they have put that camp online. And the price is cut significantly. And so from 10 to 12 every day, they're going to learn how to 3D print or whatever the thing is. So that might be, if your staff is up to it. And honestly, you know, it is very entertaining. Now, I'm not sure about little ones, and the parents would have to decide. But for middle school kids, they can do that for a couple of hours online, and it does entertain them. So if that's something that, I mean, everybody's safe if they do it from Zoom, if you have the
And it would just be logistics and trying to figure it all out and work it, you know, see what we could work out.
Exercise. I mean, some of the
Right.
school stuff that we've done is they're doing, you know, if they would teach a yoga class or whatever for the kids, you know, so.
Right.
And we wouldn't normally, so for something like this, we're not proposing a fee of any sorts. We would have to work through, you
Yeah.
know, obviously just the logistics of providing it. So we're not saying that we would offer this online
Yeah.
option as a fee at this point, just given the fact that there's a lot of unknown and uncertainty of how that would work and number of individuals that would sign up for that. So.
Something free to the public would be
I
great.
hear loud and clear staff says we not have to cancel. We agreed on that.
Is it easier for you to refund or to ask them if they want to put it toward next year?
Probably as a finance side, I would say refund, but I would think.
Yeah, you're crossing budget years and things of that nature, prepaids and.
Plus, a lot of people's money is really tight.
So we need a motion to authorize a refund.
So moved.
Any further discussion?
I commend you about being able to find the staff, because right now, with a lot of places I talk with, especially a lot of the tourist areas that I talk with, that depend on the college, and there's no college here, the restaurants and everybody's having a hard time finding staff for it, so.
Well, there are college in the apartments.
Do what?
There are college students in the apartments.
Yeah,
Um,
to some degree.
Yeah, some of them, we've been in touch with them, letting them know that, you know, we're still trying to figure out summer camp. So I don't know how many of them are still at home, like if they're not here. But I'm sure we have some that are still here that are gonna have to find a job. So we want to help them out as well. So maybe that's,
A lot of them work restaurants, so once they're opening up, they're going to be back
right.
doing that.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor?
Thank you. So as you can tell, like a lot of things, I'll end by saying it's still fluid, so there's potential there. There's some things that could be offered online, and I think that'd be a great benefit to parents looking for different avenues of entertainment and things of that nature for their children. So we're working through that process. So I appreciate everyone's flexibility and willingness to work with us.
Sorry you don't get to do that, because y'all do a good job.
Yeah, thank you. Do you have data on how many of our parents that leave their children in your summer camp are doing that because they work outside the home and need that service?
I don't. I know some of them just because I know them personally. I'm sure I will know that more after this meeting.
Yeah,
I think
it's
that's
gonna be a hardship.
Moving forward, the pool.
The pool. So the pool, we'll talk about in some detail again. Ms. Brown has more details to talk about than technicalities than I do on how we can reopen the pool. But the pool was scheduled to open this weekend. As we went through the last 10 weeks, a lot of normal preparation work that goes into the pool, I authorized or I instructed to not fulfill at the time that we normally would. The pool, and Ms. Brown can give some numbers, the pool is obviously very expensive to open. So the number of chemicals and sand and filters, et cetera, that go into that, the hiring process, the training process, most notably, it's a very extensive process. And so until we had some clear guidelines, which really just came out yesterday as part of the governor's phase 2, pools were not a certainty. So as of right now, our proposal is to open the pool on a delayed schedule. We obviously have some work that needs to be done to get the pool up and running, and I think Mr. Pate is beginning to work on that process. But the pool, if we choose to open it, has some significant guidelines that we need to follow. So Ms. Brown can pass along those guidelines, cloths, masks, and things of that nature. So not your typical laying by the pool guidelines. So would you like to share your research since yesterday? And again, this just came out last night as part of phase 2 with the governor's plan. So again, this is somewhat still fluid.
So there was, again, I've been on several Zoom meetings, and even my staff, when I was on a meeting this morning, I had staff on another meeting with all about pools with other places around the state. And so according to the guidelines, we can open the pool at 50% capacity. Our capacity, that would put us at about 125 people in the pool area. However, that means you can only have 32 people in the pool at one time. And they have to be social distanced in the pool. There cannot be like hurdles, like groups of people, like you have to be spread out. This is another one sort of like summer camp. We would have to go in there and tape off sections, squares of the pool deck to where families could be in those certain sections. Some of the things that we have brainstormed about, swim lessons, I'm pretty certain we would have to cancel swim lessons because it would be face-to-face. You're not required to wear a mask in the pool, but you are required to wear a mask outside of the pool. So mama who wants to sunbathe while kids are playing in the pool would have to have a mask on. Lifeguards is kind of a gray area because if they have to jump in and save someone, they can't be wearing a mask. They say don't wear the mask in the pool because of the water and potential suffocation. So lifeguards would be a little different, especially if they're on the stand. So having the pool, if we have a limited capacity, I don't see how we can just say first come, first serve, because you're gonna have a lot of people upset who show up at the pool and they can't get in. And I mean, when people come to the pool, it's like when you go to the beach, you've got like half your household on you. So some of the things that we've brainstormed with is having like 2 sessions that you can call and register for. So let's say we do 10 to 2, and these hours can change. These are just kind of things that we were brainstorming, but you could do 10 to 2 and then a 3 to 7. And we would have to have one person that would check people in. We would have to ask all the questions. We would have to take temperatures. We would have to have another guard that would escort them to their square and kind of give them the rules of what they have to do. Some of the things that other pools were recommending is that they post to like come to the pool ready to get into the pool so that there's not as much restroom use and kind of use the restroom as an emergency type thing. I mean, it would obviously be there if you have to go, but trying to limit the amount of usage in your restrooms. And that way, if we had 2 sessions, the 2 to 3 time, like that 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. time frame, they would have to go in and sanitize everything and get it all ready for the next group of swimmers to come in. As with anything, it's how do you make it work to where you don't make people upset or unhappy? Do we make them prepay if, let's say you call and schedule a time and then you don't show, then, so you make them prepay so that if they don't show, oh, well, we've already got your money. Or you schedule an afternoon time and it thunderstorms, do we have to reimburse you for that because it rained on your scheduled time? I mean, there's a lot of things to think about with opening the pool. And, once we open the pool, if there is a case, then the health department's probably going to come in and shut us down if somebody tests positive, so.
So, the pool has never been a moneymaker
No,
in
ma'am.
the years that I've worked at.
No, ma'am.
So what do you think is the revenue versus expense on this?
Whew.
Higher than we normally?
Yeah,
We talked about this just a few moments before the meeting. We don't have numbers at this point because we are going to have some additional staffing, maybe 1 or 2 additional.
Plus cleaning supplies.
Right, so there is a cost to this, like there is with anything, but I don't have that data. The pool itself, and I may be completely wrong here, I think only loses.
probably on a good year, when the weather's good, we've probably have lost 30,000 on a good year. And we've had bad years where it's been like this, or we had a heater go out, or something big happen.
Our concern, and I'll share it with you, and obviously it's for discussion, our concern is trying our best to provide something for people to do. And that's a difficult thing to do, is what you're hearing here. So we want to do online things and pools, and we want to be able to provide some access if we can. It's obviously something that no one has ever dealt with before. This is not something that any of us have ever dealt with. And we're just wanting to give you the information that's out there of where we stand right now. Because the pool is a very big deal in Blowing Rock. It has been for as long as Blowing Rock has probably been a town. It's had a pool of some sort. So we're working through this guideline information right now to try to put together something that, if it's feasible.
I've got
So
a
you want
question.
some time?
Thank you
You're
for
saying
Jennifer.
you want some time?
Well, we're going to have time. I mean, right now, we don't have sufficient staffing. Just the returning,
This doesn't require a vote either.
just the returning lifeguards that we have, we will need more. And we were in the process of getting one of our staff members certified to be able to certify people to be a lifeguard, and all of that got canceled through all of this going on. So we're waiting for that class to even open up to even be able to find or hire anyone. Right now, I have two people who want to be lifeguards who are not certified. So, I mean, that's going to be another issue and struggle, is to trying to get enough people to work and certified to be able to work.
Well, I think we're looking at a 30 to 40% reduction in sales tax revenue. And I guess my concern is, can we afford losing 30,000 or 60,000 on the pool?
Mr. Harwood.
Yeah, thank you. So I read through all these things last night for the board. And in theory, they sound great. It sounds like impossible to enforce. I mean, it sounds like a nightmare to try to keep mom in her square while the kid
Without
is-
this on in the sunshine.
and the kid 6 feet away from the other kid. It sounded impossible.
I would also say that it would be my recommendation not to open the slide. Our slide is enclosed. So to have to go in there and sanitize and clean that slide, and also the way you get to the slide, it's not just a ladder, it's platforms that kids are actually crawling on. So that would be another issue. So I would say that we wouldn't open the slide either.
Well, what I'm trying to discern is, what do you want to do? Is it easier? It sounds impossible to me to open the pool and try to give a good experience. And it sounds like a super hardship on your staff to try to enforce any of this. But at the same time, I hear Shane saying that we want to provide some good experiences for folks if we can.
David, I have an idea, and this might not be what
Let her, can she answer that?
Oh, yeah,
Thank
sure.
you.
Look, this is my job. I'm in Parks and Recreation for a reason, and that is because of what we do. It's summer camp, it's pool, it's festivals, it's events, it's all the fun things that we enjoy and want to provide for people. And I think during this situation, my fear and my concern is that we ruin that reputation, and that the customer service side of trying to tell people, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, here's what you have to do. Like, that is my concern, is that we're gonna have more complaints over that, why, well, the pool's open, but you can't really go and enjoy the pool. It's not what I expected, it's not what I wanted. And that's my biggest concern. We will do and provide as much as we can. I mean, that is what we're here for.
Well, I guess my statement is, I'm okay with not opening the pool, because I think it's not only hurting cats, it's hurting wet cats, wet pool cats, and the,
Mad cats.
yeah, and mad ones, and,
Mad parents.
Well, and then I will say this, another concern we've thought about is, we have a lot of local kids who that's their like babysitter, and mom and dad isn't there. So if you're 12 years or older, you can come to the pool without adult supervision. I mean, a lot of things would have to change that way, because I don't feel comfortable having such strict regulations and not having an adult there.
okay.
Virginia, you have it.
The only idea that I could come up with, and this would probably be very disappointing, it would be disappointing to me as a mom, would have it to be for just lap swimming,
Just what?
swimming laps. And not that our pool is Olympic length at all, but it would give some exercise, and people could schedule it, for 30 minutes and do that and not have any, I just can't see it being anything else, because it will. They'll be yelling, and your staff are amazing. It's a great first job. Drake was your girls might have been lifeguards. It's a great first job. But if you're yelling at adults without their mask on the whole time, and you're a child, they're teenagers. It's putting them in a bad situation, plus trying to clean, and, so I can't, I was just trying to think of how can we be in the pool and keep it,
Well, this is a department decision, okay? Ultimately, this is a department decision. Something else I was going to throw in the mix. 50% capacity, okay? If we do open it, Blaine Rock residents only.
Why don't we just
So-
use the KISS method and not open it?
I'm leaning toward not opening it either.
Okay? I
But
think
Jennifer, Ms. Brown, I think this is giving you an opportunity to do other things, the creativity part that I think your people want to do. And it's just, I can't imagine being in your position trying to control the pool with what I wrote down.
Well, I think we ought to leave this up to Ms. Brown. This
Well,
one.
I agree with that. I just simply wanted her and Shane to know that if they don't want to open it, that is
Yeah.
fine with me.
And
Well,
I
there
know
was-
my 2 cents out is that I'm probably the only one here that would like to see that.
what?
We have taken so much away from the kids, and it's the only thing that the governor allowed that the kids can do. You can only think of so much creativity. You're taking everything away. You can't say you're gonna lose a lot of money as far as you're gonna hire extra at the pool, but you're not hiring less at the park because you're not gonna need it. We don't have a playground open, we don't have a basketball court open. We don't have anything hardly open in the park right now. I just feel like the new norm, it might be this, and that we ought to at least some way try and figure out how to do it. We can always stop it, but I feel like we're failing ourselves, and we're failing a lot of kids that look forward to something to do if we don't try. I just feel like we're.
But I think
I
we
think
have
I
others.
think we ought to leave this up
I
to
know.
Ms. Brown.
Trail walking?
Walking?
But
I
I
hear
think we
three
ought to
lanes.
leave, guys,
Huh?
I think we ought to leave this up to Ms. Brown, it's her department.
Well, the other part is it may expand after June 26th and things may loosen up where if it start, you know, if it let people know that this summer is gonna look very differently. And, you know,
And I would add, it would be, in a good scenario, it's gonna be several weeks before we can get everything up and running. So it's
so
not.
that puts
it's-
us to the 26th almost.
We'll have
anyway.
more, we may have more knowledge, more data by the time we can get it. You know,
Yeah.
Our goal would be to, take each step along the way of getting towards that situation.
Well,
And so-
and I will also say, it really will be towards the end of June, 1st of July, before we would be able to open, if we did open. But then,
That's when the park will
and
be
then,
back.
then the other side of that as well is that it would be a really shortened pool season probably, because if school starts back early, a lot of our staff is school-age children, so we would not have the staff, they would be back in school. So, I mean, there's a lot of variables going on with the uncertainty of everything. It's not, just the pool.
Well, I can tell you, ASU's talking about doing the same thing the state is. Bring them in early, and when they go home for Thanksgiving, they have their finals online and they don't come back to campus.
And so, I have one lifeguard right now who goes to state, so that lifeguard would probably be gone pretty early.
Alex,
So-
Well, I lean toward closing it, but I hear Doug loud and clear. As a compromise, I would recommend we put it under the cognizance of the manager. Period.
So what I will do is keep you updated on how our progress is moving forward with getting things moving and opening and training and et cetera.
So along with that, because the biggest frustration I've had with the pandemic as a person is the unknowing. So if you honestly think, if we got started now, it's gonna be the end of June, put out there on our website and our information, so pool closed until the 26th of June. Put out there that the summer camps are closed. We, as soon as possible, that we can let the public know where we stand, then they can start, because people are like, what do we do? Summer is here next week for the schools. On May 29th, the kids are off at online school. I know, it's wonderful, but parents are thinking, are planning, so what are we gonna do? And they're gonna be looking towards us, so if we, as soon as we can.
Yeah, we do need to adjust the website, because it does say on there the pool's opening is tomorrow.
We will do so today.
On the newsletter,
Well, so with the newsletter, at the time that the newsletter went out, we were still planning our summer as if all was well, and we didn't want to we did put in there that it would be subject to change. We did put out on our Facebook page that the pool was not going to be opening this weekend, and that we would update with further information, once we knew more.
we just need to change it to the big one.
So
too.
we'll change all of that. That's our goal after this meeting.
And TDA and let them
Yes.
know.
And what about wearing masks? We have no legal authority to ask people to wear masks, do we?
We do not.
Do retailers
Yes,
or restaurants? Well, I guess
Retailers and restaurants can refuse service,
yeah.
is my understanding, unless, I'm looking at Alan, unless he knows otherwise, but that is under the premise we've been operating. We do have some in town that have that guideline.
Is the chamber encouraging that and offering masks, or masks being passed out to?
Rumpel Church has made a lot of hundreds of thousands of masks and has put some in the post office, and there's some, they're all gone now, but they do have some at the back of the church if people want to pick them up.
And I noticed that the chamber on their website are pushing the 3Ws. I mean, they are trying to push that out.
3Ws?
Right.
And we do have, the sandwich signs will be up this weekend. We had a printing issue last weekend, so they'll be up this weekend. We've got several of those on Main Street that have the 3Ws that, wear and wash and wait.
And they get that.
So
The
those,
chamber supplied us at the Rock all that information, the 3Ws, the distancing.
Good. They've done a great
But I
job.
think you're also offering masks.
That's
My
right, we're
concern
offering masks,
is if people are walking down the street, do we have some way, do retailers have access to them?
So, some retailers do have masks. I know they have them in the stores. We aren't currently passing those out. One of a concern that we had, and other governments have shared this concern, is that if our police department, for instance, is passing those out, it's not as much of a guideline as it looks like it's a requirement or a restriction at that point. So we're just being mindful from the town's perspective of not passing those out. The chamber, someone, others, if they're available, that's something they could definitely
And I
provide.
think if the chamber could check with Rumpel, I mean, it would be nice for them to supply those to the retail. You know, they could put it in a basket.
Sure.
They should-
We also have a new knitting company in town.
Knitting?
Matheson Knitting.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. He's gonna put all his grandkids at work. Is that
We're getting
Ground
inundated
floor.
with, do we just go by the governor's order?
Okay.
Facility rules?
So,
Okay,
what's next?
Moving forward.
There's no more.
4th of July, well, I think we're all pretty well considering the parade stuff.
So the
Merit raises.
concern was,
Ms. Brown.
sorry. She's taking orders, I think, over here. So
Just keep us posted, Mr. Manager.
So for the parade, our typical July 4th parade, we do have some things that normally happen soon with reservations of bands and sign-ups and things of that nature. So we were waiting, obviously, to see kind of how the governor phase 2 looked. That at this point goes through June 26th, not July 4th. One of the concerns, and it's mentioned in here with regards to mass gatherings, currently right now, from an outside perspective, is 25. Very small number, obviously. It does mention festivals and parades by name within that particular FAQ. We are concerned with how could we go forward with planning a parade. I will tell you, not that it necessarily matters, the town of Boone has decided as of today to cancel theirs. And the same concerns with just how can we properly plan a parade without knowing what to plan for. And that's our concern, and again, not trying to take Ms. Brown's thunder, but our concern is properly planning a large event with maybe only days or a week or so to plan for at that point. We're unsure of what phase 3 may look like. Phase 2 looks different than it did, looks different than we thought it was going to look somewhat. He modified phase 2, so we do have concerns, and again, our recommendation, unfortunately, is we're not so sure that we can see an avenue or a vehicle to properly have the 4th of July parade safely.
And this doesn't require our vote, this is
No.
more,
No, this is
back to you.
Well,
We just wanted to hear if you had any feedback or concerns with that.
I defer to you.
yeah, look, I'm just going to interject and say, last year, we had recognized that there was over 30,000 people in our park on 4th of July. So to social distance is going to be very difficult. And so to have our festivities in a parade, I mean, the sidewalks and things are packed. I mean, they're packed in there like sardines. And I don't know if the governor's going to go from 25 people to 30,000 in real quick.
I talked to Mr. Christie today, and even going into phase 3, an event like that would be probably unheard of right now.
Okay, makes sense.
One of the things I was gonna say, just along that line, is I understand the parade, and, because we don't know we can't plan on it not knowing what's gonna change. I give a whole lot of faith now, back into Jennifer and her staff, though, as far as activities, if the governor opens up on the 26th, I'm sure Jennifer can come up with enough activities to make people happy on the floor,
Yeah.
in the park.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Good point.
But I'm in agreement that I don't think there's any way we can plan on a parade, but, and like I said, I think you could easily set up the games like what we had, what we've done before, and make everything a very enjoyable experience of being in Blowing Rock. I think one of the things that we're looking for is still, I don't know for certainty, and unless y'all found out, if they're even gonna do the fireworks.
Fireworks.
I've heard they're on, I've heard they're off.
Okay.
What do you see in the country club?
So I have been in discussions with the country club. I've been in discussions with the fireworks company that we're using this year, which is different from years past. He is still planning on fireworks for the 3rd if we would like. Club, however, they do not want the public on the golf course. So if we were going to advertise that we were still having fireworks on the 3rd, I don't know how that would look from sitting in your cars watching fireworks on the side of the road. And when I talked to Martha at the country club, she did throw out an option. They want to still have the fireworks for their members, but they have more control over their members and where they can sit and park and social distance. She did offer, she said, if the town decides not to advertise fireworks, that the country club would reimburse our half and it would just be their show alone. And we would just let them do their own show and the town wouldn't be involved. That conversation went a little further, and I think that's what they really would want from here on out, to where it wasn't, blocking up roads and trying to tell the public they can't go down there and, all of that kind of thing, so.
And that's pretty rough with the residents that live nearby.
It is. I mean, we have to block the roads and make them one way and,
Devil's advocate a little bit there, so the police are going to enforce, keep driving, go forth and say, hey, you can't pull stop here, you can't stop here, you gotta keep going, you can't pull off. Because you know as well as I do, if the word will still get around that Boyd Rock's having fireworks, or that the country club's having fireworks, and they will be there, so.
I know as a town, we would not advertise them.
Right.
We would just leave them. It might help to have an officer the first year especially.
But you know that the word will still get out, that there's fireworks out there that they can see,
And
and
it's
there'll
not
be
just
people walking
Gulfport.
down that are somewhere.
It's Green Hill, it's all of the neighborhoods around the whole golf course where you can see them go off.
We would not ask our police department to restrict access, and we should not going forward to public roads either. So regardless of the location of those.
And they'll have to
For
do
the
their own
fireworks?
enforcement with,
$3,500.
keeping people off the golf course.
We don't spend it.
advertise
It comes back.
There's still gonna be families that's
We
gonna.
don't give it to them.
Walk
We just
down there
give it.
and sit down on the bank. That will still be, that will be country club's duty to enforce that.
That is correct.
Correct.
So that might need to get back to them.
Yeah, I think we'll
It might help with their decision.
let Shane and Brown handle this, but I will say this. Under phase 3, it's very possible that fireworks, large group gatherings will not be allowed. Over a certain number of people.
Does the fireworks at the country club require a permit from us?
So
that
as the
permit
town,
free?
we take care of everything. I'm the contact person for the vendor. I do all the permitting. I get everything set up. The only thing that they have to do is have the space open for them to deliver them the day of the fireworks.
Mr. Mayor, have you heard anything out of Kathy and Twitch?
They don't know. They don't even know if they're gonna be open by July.
Have they said anything about their fireworks?
No, they
They're
haven't.
the big boys in this whole thing.
Well, and see, they don't have to hire, they purchase and they're all qualified to set them off.
Yeah,
We
and the
don't
fire
get
department
money
would still have
back,
to be
we just
there.
won't spend it. Is that what we're saying?
No, we would get money back.
Let me
If
understand.
we're already giving it to
But
them?
there's been a deposit, correct?
No, they've been paid for.
They've been paid.
So the town pays half and the country club pays half, and we have both paid our share in order to, because we had to go ahead and pay so they could get them ordered and processed.
Which is approximately
$3,500.
$3,500
I
a
don't
piece.
see how we can, how it is in the airspace of the town. Right? I mean,
So hypothetically, if the
Yes.
country club were to move forward with fireworks and the town does not advertise, The country club would still have to go through the same permitting process through the fire department, et cetera. The fire department would still have to be on duty, on site. That would be for the country club to work out that process and fees or cost, et cetera, with that. The police department would no longer be needed, obviously, from that aspect, unless they were to hire security or something of that nature for their country club, for the property. But the town would not be providing that further. So currently, and please stop me, we essentially offer not only half of the fireworks, but we also offer the police security that's there and the fire department at no cost. So that would be something that would obviously need to change if we were not advertising that as a town-sponsored event.
And half of our staff also has to go and man the golf course and make sure that there's nobody unruly.
And Miss Brown is handling all of the coordination. So
Correct.
that would, if they take it over, that would not be under town auspices.
Correct.
But the thing about that people forget is, but the thing that people forget, and even just living in the neighborhood, is it's not private property. Those are town roads.
Correct.
No, I think what we were saying is that it sounds like the town's doing a lot, and to refuse public people there. I can see it from my porch, so I never go, so I don't know how many people are going there, but what I'm hearing,
Well,
it's a lot of coordination.
Well, and it should be, because it's surrounded by town roads. It's not on private property, it's not a gated community.
Right, but they're just saying don't people sit on the golf course?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what
They typically allow them to a certain point, but this year they would not be allowed, according to
On the golf
Martha,
course.
on the golf
And
course.
On the
that's
golf
their,
course.
that's their right.
Well,
Yeah.
that's it, yeah. And so I think from this point, we let our town manager and Parks and Rec director handle it and make the decision. What do y'all think?
I agree.
I agree.
I will say at this point, we are leaning, I believe, as a staff, to allow them to move forward at the country club with the fireworks.
To do what now?
For the country club to move forward 100% with the fireworks.
Well, they better be aware that no matter if we're not in it or not, there's gonna be a bunch of people out there.
Right, and I was gonna say, one of the things we may want to make sure that we put on the streets out there somewhere, because it is a public street, we need to make sure that we say no parking. I mean, we need to make sure we say that.
Certainly.
Or that way they don't get out there and start doing as usual, think they can just go out there and park, and then you get one right behind the other, and then all of a sudden,
So I think probably another saving grace is that it's on Friday the 3rd. So I'm hoping that a lot of people, you know what I'm saying, like they're thinking that it's going to be on Saturday the 4th like we normally would have things. And if we decide to do some park games and stuff in the park on Saturday, if we're allowed, that, that we, hopefully we will deter people from going Friday night, hopefully there won't be too many going Friday night.
could we think about maybe now going back to what we used to do when I was young and having the band then a little later instead of having them in so early in the evening?
Are you talking on Saturday?
I've heard for a long time, is
On
that the band, the dance band ends too soon. Is if we could have them play a little later, most of the time we used to cut that off to give people time enough to leave from here to go out there and get ready for the fireworks. So maybe we could carry the band on to 8 or 8:30.
Yes, and I think, well, with it being on the 4th, we might have to talk to them. I have to see, but we might be able to adjust their time because they do come from off the mountain. So that is something we can talk to them about. But yes, typically we've ended them earlier because people want to leave and go get ready for fireworks or go eat dinner kind of thing. But we can talk to the bands. My only concern with having bands is how much of a crowd we're going to draw and how you keep social distancing.
Well, I mean, this is all in hopes of.
In hopes, yes.
Also, but I'm talking about going forward next year especially, let's have the band play later.
I will tell you what I would love to do,
Yeah.
which has been, since I've been in this job, one of the things that I've always thought is that on that Saturday, People come into town, parking, they already have an issue finding it, and when they find it, that's gold to them. So they come in, they find a parking spot, they come into our park, they listen to bands, they play the games, they let their kids go on the bounce house. They have all of this, and then we tell them to leave and go find a parking spot over near the country club for fireworks. I would love to be able, if we decided to move forward and have fireworks still with our event, is to shoot them off at Devant Field to where people can still stay in the park, so we can have a band play up until firework time, and it gives it an entire experience, a better experience for your visitor, because they're parked, they're here, they're downtown, they can go eat in restaurants, or if Virginia gets food trucks passed or whatever. But you know what I mean? To me, it makes a better experience, and they're here in downtown. We're not making them leave to go somewhere else.
I am so glad to hear you say that. Because I'm sitting here listening, and what's getting glossed over for me is an iconic event that I've been going to for 20 years with my kids is all of a sudden becoming a private, exclusive event that the town is going to have to police. Whether we say we're not, but there's going to be traffic issues, there's going to be parking issues. And I have a real issue with the town policing what is now a private event. That's a separate issue.
So
But
half
the
of the,
law, let me finish my thought. So the loss of this iconic event, I'm so glad to hear that we might look at replacing it with our own event.
or using our half of the fireworks and off at Devant Field.
Guys, you have a fire issue with using Devant Field. These things are set up according to their size
Well,
mandated by the state.
Well, let's not get into the weeds about where it is, but the fact that we're talking about it. And this bothers me enough that I'm not sure we should issue a permit for the country club. If we're not going to be collaborative and keep this together with the town, then I'm not sure we can unless they want to pay us for the police it's going to take to monitor Highway 321 and all the surrounding streets. I'm not sure that the town needs to be providing that for a private event.
I agree.
Well, the permit,
Now, this is a bigger conversation,
I think.
but I didn't want us to have this and gloss over this.
Well, you've got a good point. An example for you, Tweedy Railroad. The highway patrol are there to monitor for traffic issues.
Oh, it shuts down 321 every year,
Oh, I know.
like it or
And,
not.
You know, I don't know where to go with, I think fireworks in town are very important. Where we have them, I don't know,
Yeah, I don't need it.
okay? But, I see what happens when we have fireworks at the country club with the traffic, parking on the sides of Country Club Road and go forth and so on. I don't know how we police that. I don't know, maybe you have to-
Understand, I'm not saying this out of retaliation. I am saying this because I think it's going to require more thought that this go from a public-private event to a private event
Mhm.
and not adversely affect our ability to monitor, to support that.
and the permit is for what?
So it's a firework permit, and I know Mayor Sellers can speak to the fact that it goes through our fire department. So
Right.
it's for the ability to set the fireworks off, so that's separate.
Right, so
Separate police,
anything beyond that, we can say, if you're going to make this a private event, these are the things you have to protect the streets and the people that are out there. Even if if you're gonna keep people off of the streets.
If they need services, then we have a cost that it's a per hour cost.
Right.
Police, fire, that
Right.
nature, that we do different things in. So whatever that would, if they would need that or not, they would have to, honestly, they need to determine that.
Right.
On a smaller
That
scale,
satisfies
on a smaller scale, when I contracted to have the fireworks shot at the Bowling Rock after the music festivals. First off, I had to get authorization from town of Bowling Rock, Watauga County, Caldwell County, and the National Park Service. Okay? So all those had to fall into play. And that's up to the person shooting off fireworks. Okay? Then I had to get a permit. Okay? Then I had to make a donation to the fire department to have a rig sitting out there. Okay? Which I did. I paid off duty police.
Well,
So that can be done.
Have you been doing that, or has Ms. Brown been doing that now? Have you been doing all that coordination, or is that, yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yes. But I will say, I mean, when I talked to the country club, Martha was very nice. She was the one who said, if the town decides not to have fireworks, we are more than willing to reimburse the town, and we'll just make it our own private event. And I mean, I can, you know, I will still work with her and help her to know what she needs to do and who she needs to be in contact with and that kind of thing.
Is it just if they want this to be a private event going forward?
Yes, we had that conversation.
Including this year.
Yes.
And we don't have to do as big a fireworks. You know, I love your idea about what you're thinking, about where you're going with that, is that we can do like a lot of the stadiums do. You know, we don't have to have them go up that high for the kids to enjoy.
They just need to be high enough you can see them above the trees. You know, like you can sit in the park and see fireworks.
How Appalachians are, or how the Panthers, when they set theirs off, you know. You're inside the stadium, you know. Charlie said, elevation is a big thing of what you're allowed. It comes into that equation of how high the thing. Something smaller along the line of what stadiums do, you know. Just a thought, you know, I just like the idea
Of course, it'll
that we
fit,
have
you
something.
know, our parade, or we may have, you know, old-fashioned 4th of July in the park, which, you know, which would be neat, which would be fun.
I think it would be good to have everything just together, and
Yeah.
you get to keep everybody in town. It gives people the opportunity to go shop in shops, go get ice cream after dinner, know that they can just hang out in town all the way through the fireworks.
Well, I have faith that the two of y'all will coordinate it, and I think you know how we're feeling, and
I think the bias is though, the police will be required, because I think Doug and I agree, people are gonna be there. If you don't have police directions out there, but no free rides. Okay?
We need to make it clear as well that another country club wants it to be a private event.
They use our police, they
Private
pay
event.
for our police.
Well, I think the country club is going to have some staff that is manning around the golf course that just says, no public parking, private event, or, they're going to have to come up with something, I feel, if they're going to do this on their own.
Well, I think should we leave it up to Mr. Fox and Ms. Brown?
That's the bias, yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Moving forward,
snap.
any additional discussions? Yes, Albert?
I've got three quick things. I just asked Shane, when will we start transitioning back to staff coming back here?
So we originally, along with Watauga County, had put a June 1st date out, and that was in accordance with the court system for Watauga County. I will say that date may change. The court system issued some new guidance today, so there's some things that are still up in the air for that. As for the town of Bowling Rock, separate from the county, we will continue, more than likely, for the majority of the summer with some type of a rotating staff. We have several staff members that I would consider high risk. We want to make sure that they're taken care of, whether that's with the plexiglass that we have out here, or we rotate staff that we don't have too many individuals in the same area. I answer that by saying we're going to remain flexible, but the doors to town hall will open. We're just not ready to give a date as of right now. The governor has, as part of phase 2, suggested that if you can work from home, then continue to work from home. So we're going to have some type of a hybrid approach moving forward.
Okay. Second thing is the Legion post here, 256, we're still putting the flags out at the cemetery. We've put out quite a few.
Okay.
This Saturday at 0900 hours, we're gonna finish, and anybody that wants to help, that's listening in or anything, show up.
To the cemetery?
Yeah.
Saturday.
0900 at the mausoleum.
That's
Okay.
9 a.m., so.
Thanks. I grew up with it, okay.
The third is a 10% of teapot. I volunteered and the board certified that I would be a member of David Graham's, is that right, Brad?
RTAC.
The High Country Council of Government, what is that thing?
Transportation Advisory Committee.
Okay, well, okay, everything went fine until
That's what you do.
they decided that I had to give them my stock portfolio. NICS. The IRS gets my stock portfolio, nobody else. And this is a state mandate, not David Graham's, but I'm not giving them my stock portfolio. And, that's that. I've talked to David. Hillary has gone to great lengths to try to get the state to comply and see my side of it, but no, they won't. So Sue did it for quite a while, and I think you said you didn't have any stocks when
I didn't, but I do now. But I was offended. I mean, I can see his point. I didn't have any stocks when I filled it out, but it was very detailed and to me a little invasive personally.
you did. Well, I don't mind that. It's just the risk of blabbermouths, and plus I've got a lot of mutual funds, and one mutual fund may have 600 companies that they buy. And the purpose of this is so I wouldn't have money invested in a company that might have something to do with road building. I have no idea. And I don't want that ever come back on me. So if anybody wants to volunteer that doesn't have any stocks, or you want to make your stocks public, go to it, because I'm not going to do it.
The way this economy's going, a new point.
Let me tell you, it has gotten better.
With all the stuff coming out of Raleigh this morning, there's gonna be a whole lot of changes made on the DOT and UT levels anyway.
Didn't they furlough,
What?
didn't they furlough the majority of them for 2 weeks?
Furloughing a lot of the top upper echelon, they're about to restructure that whole department, just like, whole division.
Shane, can you give us an update on, how it went with the bathroom and what you guys were thinking about with the rest of the bathrooms and schedule for that?
I will. I will say, so we do need to add that to the agenda next month to reappoint a position. That position needs to
All
have
right, we will do that next month.
for June. So, you want to talk about the park attendance?
So since the bathrooms have been opened this past weekend, we have had a cleaning service come in around 2 o'clock to sanitize and clean, and then they come in and shut them down and sanitize and clean at 6 o'clock. Our staff during the week has been going in and check. I mean, this has been a great week because there's not many people using the restroom right now. But we are still going to have to hire park attendants because the trash is, I mean, it has gone bananas around here.
It's to-go stuff.
It's a lot of to-go stuff. So we are going to have to still hire park attendants to do trash and do restroom, you know, to even double check restrooms in between the sanitizing and cleaning, you know, if there's a mess. Let me tell you, you can clean a restroom and in 5 minutes walk out and it be disaster again. So we are going to have to hire staff for that. A conversation that Shane and I had actually today is by opening pickleball and tennis and even basketball, if we decide to do that, not handing out equipment to people to use just because of the sanitation requirements of it's going to be hard to sanitize a tennis ball, different things like that. So that was a conversation that we've had, that we should probably hold off on letting people use, have equipment, just tell people that they're going to have to bring their own basketball or bring their own tennis rackets and that kind of thing. The pickleball net, we can probably still set up if somebody wants to come and play pickleball. I think that is very feasible, but as far as using the actual equipment, I don't think we should do that right now until we kind of see how the phase 3 and stuff goes. Opening up the other bathrooms, we haven't had that conversation yet, but that's something that we can start looking into, especially when we hire some more park attendants and have more staff on hand to be able to clean those. So,
I would leave that up to y'all again. I mean, I think the big decision was opening the one in Memorial Park, and it sounds like it went okay. I saw a lot of people going in there. The trash it's gonna be more than whenever they go through it. It was all, I mean, it was full at 10 o'clock when I walked downtown.
yeah, and the hard thing about the trash downtown is those cans don't have bags in them because the garbage truck just comes and puts them on the back and dumps them, and so it's kind of a waste to have a bag. So that's a conversation I guess we need to have is, maybe Friday evenings we go through and put bags in them so that maybe our park attendants can go. I don't know how we make that work, but we can try to figure something out for the weekends, because I do know trash is absolutely crazy.
Restaurants getting open just as much as they are, it's gonna help relieve
Some of that.
I would ask, though, with the summer starting to get back and the people getting ready the way we are open, I would look at, as soon as I could, that I would ask is if you get the bathrooms open at Braun.
Okay.
That's a very popular place because it's people parking at the parking deck who may have just got here and first thing they need is a bathroom, and so, that is another place I'd look at as soon as possible, trying to get up.
Well, and, for us as well, if you can have mass gatherings of 25 right now, people can rent the pavilion technically and have, something there or, that kind of thing. So we will open up all the bathrooms. I just want to make sure we have enough staff and enough supplies and stuff to be able to sanitize them and keep them clean. We actually have 2 new people who will be working this weekend to start and kind of get a feel for things, so.
So the recommendation is we're gonna allow tennis and pickleball, but you have to bring your own equipment.
That would be my recommendation.
That's up to.
That's up to y'all.
Yes.
I just wanna-
So-
'cause I know that's gonna be an issue.
I'll add a
Mr.
couple.
Manager, that
Yeah.
one thing we're lucky is that when we look at all the trash that we've been accumulating over the weekend, last weekend and the weekend before, I said, just think how bad it would have been if Kilwins was open.
They were open.
I want to hear Shane's summary on pickleball. Where are we?
Okay, so for pickleball and tennis,
Okay.
it will open at 5 p.m. tomorrow. We were just discussing, we have the only true real outdoor basketball courts in the county, and whether or not we want to attempt to open those up with signage that we hope individuals can police themselves. We do have 2 individuals that will be here this weekend as park attendants and Park and Rec, so we were just discussing allowing that to take place with again, signage, and we'll see how flexible we need to be with moving forward with that. I think that's something that we'll have an answer very soon with. But pickleball and tennis, I believe we're comfortable in saying we'll open at 5 p.m. tomorrow as part of phase 2. We're recommending that individuals bring their own equipment because there's obviously less risk there for us from a sanitation and wiping it down, etc. I think that's probably not a lot to ask. Most of our people do now anyway. We don't have very few, other than basketballs. That's 90% of what we hand out is basketballs. And so we can work through that. But that would move forward with 5 p.m. tomorrow. I would also add that we normally start our weekend trash pickup this week. So we were a little bit caught off guard with last weekend. Mr. Blackburn's not here, but He personally and Mr. Presnell came in, and Dustin, Mr. Watson came in this weekend and did trash duty because of the need there. We unfortunately were not prepared for that one, as the number of individuals in town. Mr. Matheson was very kind to point out the trash situation early on, and we were able to put a plan together very quickly and have trash picked up Sunday morning. But going forward, the weekend trash pickup is fully in effect, so we're picking up trash on the weekends now on Main Street and Sunset. So that was a mistake we made, not anticipating the to-go boxes, the pizza boxes. So that is moving forward also. So.
And would you additionally summarize the fireworks issue?
Our recommendation is for the town to allow the fireworks to be displayed or shot by the country club. So the town will not be advertising fireworks as a town event.
And the cost of, if they need police, would be borne by the country club?
That is correct.
Any further discussion? Doug?
A couple of things, and I should have brought this up earlier, but it just comes to me. I almost wish that we could start that next year as far as the fireworks, because between the websites and the town calendars and everything that's out there, everybody around is thinking July 4th fireworks. I mean, it's been promoted already, you know, as far as the calendars.
Yeah.
That was just a thought. The other thing, kind of away from that, is usually on this weekend, Mr. Bartlett starts. Will he be starting this weekend, or has
with his
have you
chocolate.
got another thing that he might be able to do? Because I know that usually he starts on Memorial Day week.
Barefoot.
Barefoot.
He calls it barefoot.
I'll come back to you hopefully in just a second with that answer.
Then,
The reason I say that is if you don't utilize him on the monitoring of the parking, you might be able to utilize him with an informational person and free up, you keep your regular officers freed up, you know.
I'll,
Do we not run afoul of?
I don't have an answer for you as of right now. I'm asking to see if I can get an answer.
Do we run afoul of the
who
government?
puts the flag up at the American Legion?
That's
Is that
That's yet to be
Bruce
seen.
or us?
The town does. The police department has keys to all the flagpoles because typically if they have to be put down at half-mast or raised, they're the,
It's torn.
it's torn, okay.
That's what.
We'll look and see if there's another one that we can replace it. Yes. And even though the Memorial Day service is canceled, we still have ordered the wreath and stuff to go out in front of Memorial Park. Like, we're keeping that so that it will be delivered Friday evening, I believe.
And 0900, we're putting flags on the grave.
Okay.
We would appreciate it.
Any other
Take
comments?
exercise.
Is planning board meeting in here? Virtual?
It's virtual.
Okay.
Tonight.
Okay.
Now, Doug has made a suggestion. Where are we on the fireworks?
We leave that up, I think we leave that up to Shane, Mr. Fox.
Where are we on what, Calvin?
On the fireworks.
Their recommendation is that
Yeah.
country club, we be responsible for running it. Country club, take it over.
I mean, is that not a department issue?
Yeah, I was just reiterating.
That's the board's bias, it appears, Shane.
All right.
But
Understood.
I think though that we should, either the town or somebody should, and the only reason I say that is because it's in the calendars and a lot of things that's already out there, that we need to get out as soon as we can, that we're not doing.
And we need to change.
Well, and we will put, I mean, that's what we'll do. We'll post that all of our 4th of July festivities have been canceled,
Are you
including,
clear?
Yeah.
yes.
Are you clear on that?
Yes.
I don't want you to be unclear.
No. And we'll provide, if we move forward, we'll provide with some help transitioning this year.
Yeah.
We'll provide help transitioning.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Good.
I just,
Alan, do you, any? No.
thanks for coming.
Peace
Are
out.
we good?
I just want to say thank you to Kent Graham, Thomas Steele for putting all this together today. Most sincere thank you to both of them for the last several meetings. Thomas has done a tremendous job in setting things up, just like today, for instance, we're being video live. I'm not sure how many viewers we may have, but whomever's watching is because of their work. So just my thank you to them. And thank you to all the departments. Obviously, Ms. Brown's been on spotlight today, but again, without saying it too many times, we just remain flexible. This is something that we obviously have never been in, and I just appreciate their work and their understanding to continue to be flexible during this time. And we'll just keep everyone here, obviously in the town, as well informed as we can as we make changes and adjustments, and I think there will be more that will be coming. I'm sure there will be, so we'll just be as flexible and nimble as we can. So just thank you for everything.
Thank you,
Thank
Council.
you.
Thank you, department heads.
Thank
Do
you.
I have a motion?